I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we begin with a roll call vote? A roll call, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Alves?
Ms. Alves contacted me last night and she's unable to be here this evening.
Mr. McGee?
Here.
Mr. Yazbek?
Here.
Mr.
Present.
Mr. Larry?
Here. The next item on the agenda is Agenda Item 4, discussion by council, vote, or other action on reconsideration of vote on the Stage 2 ride application. This is sponsored by Mr. Yazbek. So, Mr. Yazbek, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flaherty. I'll just read into the record an email that was sent on Thursday, October 9th at 2:01 p.m. It was addressed to Superintendent Lindberg. It was copied to all town councilors as well as the town clerk. Superintendent Lindberg, please be advised that the town council took action on Phase 2 ride application last Monday evening, October 6th. Please be advised that I've asked that the motion, which did not pass, be reconsidered. Attached is a letter dated October 2nd from Chair LaFleur. Although this letter was discussed at town council meeting and referenced that it was contained in the town council meeting packet prepared October 2nd, it was not, and this fact has been confirmed by the town clerk as she received the letter late morning on October 3rd, 2014, well past the packet preparation time, approximately 24 hours earlier. The letter was emailed, however. It did not garner my attention as I field over 100 emails on an average day. Please be advised that the letter was not read in its entirety by the presenter. The last paragraph was omitted. When I finally went back to find the letter Tuesday, I noticed that the last paragraph was never discussed when we deliberated the questions. If this town council member had all the information at the time of the motion and the vote, I believe I may have acted differently, and maybe others will be of like mind. Anyways, this is the reason the Phase 2 has been asked to be reconsidered by this town councilor, which brings me to another request of you, hopefully my last, but I cannot guarantee. Can you attend the October 20th town council meeting to discuss the special election requirement, be the first on the agenda as dictated by council rule, or if you cannot make the meeting, could you please provide a plain English explanation prior to the packet for the next meeting being prepared, deadline October 15th to the town clerk. Thank you in advance for your consideration. With that, I'll make a motion that we reconsider the vote for Phase 2 ride application.
Motion by Council Yazbek to reconsider the vote from October 6th. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McGee. Discussion? I will just say for clarification that the letter that we received from the school department was forwarded to the clerk by me within 5 minutes of receiving it. I received it on Friday, October, I believe it was October 1st. I'm sorry, October 3rd, it was Friday. And the clerk transmitted it to the town council via email within about 90 minutes. So everybody received it via email by Friday at about noontime, well within the acceptable and required time frame for materials to be transmitted. So although Mr. Yazbek may not have garnered his attention, I would submit that we're all busy, we all get emails, we're all getting information all the time. And I'm sorry that he wasn't able to read it, but the information was not in any way withheld, and everybody in this council had access to it with plenty of time for discussion before the meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record. I will be voting against reconsideration, but this is what makes democracy work. So unless there's any other discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. McGee?
No.
Mr. Yazbek?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
The motion is to reconsider.
Yes. To reconsider.
You want to start that again, Mr. President?
The motion, well, actually, it says, the rules say once a motion is underway, it can't be interrupted.
You're correct.
So,
So we have Mr. McGee vote no, I voted yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Yazbek voted yes, and I voted yes.
and I vote no. So it's 2-2, and therefore the motion for reconsideration fails.
Okay.
Well, I guess you can do a reconsideration vote if you'd like.
There's no majority, it's a tie. Sorry, I'm not the solicitor.
Let's go with
The motion was to have reconsideration vote. We voted no. Well, I'm just saying, that's what you voted. I can't put the words in your mouth. Now, my question to the solicitor is, I believe that we can have a reconsideration vote at the same meeting. The question is whether we can have a reconsideration vote of a reconsideration vote.
Yes. I don't think you can have a reconsideration of the reconsideration if you look at the rules, but let me say, I don't, if he was mistaken in his vote, while it was being called, and it wasn't final, and he made it known, I think that he should be able to correct his vote. I would have to research Robert's rules, but I'm going off of, in the middle of the vote, he was confused, it wasn't a final vote at that time, and that I would, and you can override me, I mean, whatever.
I have no objection to allowing the vote to be changed if anybody else does.
So we consider.
Right. What I'm saying is that the vote we just took was voted 2-2, and so therefore it fails. What I'm saying is that if you intended to vote yes, and the solicitor is saying that, that in his opinion, that you thought you were voting the other way, you were mistaken, I have no objection to allowing Mr. McGee's vote to be changed from a no to a yes.
I would ask that the question be reread,
Yes.
so that everybody's clear.
Yep.
And I'm not, I don't want to say revote, but what I do want to say is, if anybody wants to correct their vote after it's reread, then let us know. And I'm going to say that the objection was raised during the vote and not after the vote was taken. Okay?
Okay.
So, Madam Clerk, would you?
Motion by Mr. Yazbek, seconded by Mr. McGee to reconsider the vote on the Stage 2 ride application of October 6th.
So,
And I'd like to say, yes, I made an incorrect note. I was talking about the next step. I thought we were at the next step. I didn't. So I did want to reconsider my vote.
Mr. President, if I may, with the indulgence and my councilman's indulgence, we took a vote previously. Let's clarify that. Can we reread what that vote was about, the results, and then?
Hold on, time out for a second. Time out. We're in the middle of a roll call vote, and I don't think we can have any interruptions in the middle of a roll call vote.
But there seemed to have been some confusion when we took.
There was some confusion, but we just had some discussion about allowing a correction to that vote to take place, and that's what's underway right now. The motion is read. Mr. McGee said yes, and I presume that the clerk is continuing to ask councilors for their vote.
ask them if they want to change their vote.
Right.
Does any council member wish to change their vote?
Hearing none, then it would be 3-1. So that means that we proceed with reconsideration. So for folks who are following this, when a reconsideration is on the agenda, there's 2 steps to it. One is the actual vote to reconsider, and if there's a majority of support to reconsider, then we actually take the vote up again from October 6th, which is where we're at right now. So, item number 5 on the agenda is discussion by council, vote or other action on Stage 2 ride application.
Mr. President,
Mr. Yazbek.
I make a motion to approve Stage 2 ride application in the amount of $31,000 with discussion to follow.
Motion by Council Yazbek. Is there a second? Seconded by Council McGee. Discussion. I think that's the action that we took on October 6th.
Correct.
I believe it was.
But we want to have all the information here so we can consider that motion. So I can't talk about it unless there's a motion on the table. That's the way I understand it. If you're going to allow me to
Okay.
talk about it, I'll
Okay.
take the motion off the
Okay,
table.
okay.
Okay? But hopefully, after we have a discussion, you'll see why.
Okay. So we have a motion that's been seconded, we're in discussion.
right, thank you. May I have the floor?
Yes.
Thank you. Just for everybody's edification, the part of the letter that wasn't read, this is the October 2nd letter addressed to Mr. Flaherty, which Mr. Flaherty had stated was in the packet, but as it turns out, we all agree wasn't in the packet. Okay, that the last paragraph was my concern. The school committee is well aware that this process, the updating of stage 1 and the completion and submission of stage 2 in an effort to determine reimbursement eligibility and approval will require a special election, potentially in the late winter or early spring. So that was the part that never got to be discussed on October 6th. Here's the situation as I understand it, based upon my limited looking into it over the past couple of weeks. The Phase 2 ride application, according to state law and the regulations by Rhode Island Department of Education, has to be complete before you send the vote to the voters. And I offer, in support of that, a handout, pass it down. A handout, one for Ken, one for Debbie, one for Cindy, one for Paul. A flow chart from the Rhode Island Department of Education, which details what happens in stage 1, what happens in stage 2, and so forth and so on. I understand that this type of dateline or procedure needs to follow, or else there will not be any state reimbursement. So the concern in the letter of October 2nd, that last paragraph, where they say will require a special election, is correct. Irregardless of whether or not the taxpayers on November 4th fund the bond issue, that bond issue question will have to be presented again, as I understand it, to the electorate in a special election sometime early next year in order to, after the stage 2 is complete, in order for the state to appropriate the funding. This particular document, I understand, was the discussion at an October 2013 meeting, which detailed how these steps have to go, which was a Mr. Joe De Silva from the Rhode Island Department of Education, who was here, I believe in this building, meeting with the superintendent, the council president, and maybe a few other people, but in any case, this process and how this timeline had to work was discussed, and the dates for submission, because of the meetings of the Department of Education, were outlined at that time. I also believe, according to my discussion with Mr. Lindbergh, and he can shed some light on it if we need him to, although I don't know that it's necessary, but if somebody wants to be comfortable with it, they can ask for it to be discussed with him. In regards to the cost reimbursement, you would want to have a special election to gather the cost reimbursement by Rhode Island Department of Education. I think it's very important that we have the Rhode Island Department of Education's commitment to helping us fund it. So I took the information based upon some of the comments that I read in the paper and articles and everything else. In a 1015 Valley Breeze article, there was a quote from the president. Under the worst case scenario, Flaherty pointed out that the entire $12 million bond package would equate to a $160 tax increase for the average homeowner. I'm told that the reimbursement of up to $1.7 million would reduce the homeowner cost by approximately $10. Well, it's not $10. It's $22.67 per year for the average taxpayer, and it's $453.33 times the 3,500 people that own a real estate parcel in North Smithfield. So although some people have expressed that they didn't think the Rhode Island Department of Education funding is that important. I contend that it is, and I contend that I don't particularly want to send $453.33 more of a tax bill to 3,500 average taxpayers. That's just me personally. Of course, the council can do as they want to do. The second thing about a phase two, because we're all fixated, and I'll be honest with you, I was guilty of being fixated on the financial aspect of this. The other thing is phase two is required before we can shut down a school, before we can move a school program to another building, before we can combine schools or facilities. All of those things are not financial issues, they're technical issues, but all of those things, under what I've learned in the past few weeks, all of those things are part of a phase two. So it's not just financial. I don't want people to think that you need to have finance. If the majority of the town council wants to send $453.33 to the taxpayers, they're free to do that. I just think that at the last meeting, we didn't talk about that. But we also didn't talk about the technical aspects to a phase two. And the technical aspects to a phase two is, if you're going to abandon Hallowell, you need phase two approval. It's as simple as that, okay? Now, granted, that part of it may be after the fact, but we didn't have a chance to discuss it, and it could be. I asked the solicitor to check into whether the assertion that a special election would be required in order to gather the funding. And you want to just enlighten the council as to your reporting as you told me?
I found, from who I spoke to, that I thought that the letter was accurate, that we need a special election. I wouldn't know if there was any exceptions to that.
Thank you. The next thing is unfortunately, because of the conversation that's occurred, Mr. DeQuattro, professional responsibility has been taken into question. Pass this down. And I'm not sure if everybody got this, but I'm checking my email and reading them all now before every meeting. This was sent to every town councilor today at approximately 4 or 4:30. That's why I brought copies with me. It's dated October 20th. It's addressed to the North Smithfield Town Council at our address, P.O. Box 248, 1 Main Street, Slatersville, in regards to the ride reimbursement. Dear members of the council, and this, again, is from David DeQuattro. I write to you today because I am out of town on business and cannot attend the town council meeting. And I wanted to set the record straight on ride reimbursement eligibility. RGB was commissioned to review 5 town and school buildings. At the end of the evaluation, a time frame of this November was given out as a possible bond vote for the consolidation and upgrades needed and documented within the report. This was managed by a subcommittee which was made up of people from the town, school, police, and fire departments. RGB was then asked to perform stage 1 for RIDE. RGB noted that stage 1 and 2 and a successful vote would be needed in order to achieve reimbursement. The committee approved stage 1 through their funds that were left over from the original budgeted amount. The committee was then disbanded by the town council, leaving stage 2 to be done but paid for after the new budget year. RGB submitted a proposal outlining the required steps and time frame in April of this year. A meeting was held with the representative of RIDE, the school facility manager, school superintendent, and president of the town council to discuss steps and reimbursement policies. Subsequent reminders were provided. The process was on target as stage 1 was completed and approved April 29th. Stage 2 was scheduled to be approved by the town council on May 19th, so as to submit stage 2 by the July 21st to RIDE and the housing aid reimbursement determined by September. On May 20th or shortly thereafter, RGB was told to hold on to stage 2. I read in the Valley Breeze last Thursday morning that RGB and specifically myself gave bad information and that it was my fault that the North Smithfield was in jeopardy of losing $1.8 million in reimbursement for the Department of Education. And through this information, poor decisions were made, causing possible misinformation and a failed bond vote. Then I was told the town administrator, who sat in on those committee meetings, told the same newspaper that the same thing during a debate with her opponent. Lastly, I read a blog from a candidate running for school committee that said he believed the same thing and again used my name. I am writing to set the record straight. At no time did I or anyone from my office ever say to anyone that one could bypass the stages of the ride process and or requirements. The fact of the matter is that a proposal created in April and addressed to the chairman of the committee, Mr. Flaherty, outlined this process and stated that stage 2 needed to be completed for a vote from RIDE so that a favorable answer would be delivered by September and in time for a November vote. This same proposal, as noted above, was not approved until October when the town council approved it and was signed by the town administrator. This was always the intention to follow RIDE standards, as I am and have done for 6 other communities this year alone. The committee and Mr. Flaherty has always been aware of the RIDE process, both through RGB and through RIDE as noted above. What was suggested to Mr. Flaherty and others is that after the town received an approved stage 1 document, that stage 2, due to the nature of reductions in energy and continued effort to increase safety and welfare of the students, would be a problem based on the comments received by RIDE, that an improved stage 2 issuance will subsequently be given after the documents were submitted. In Thursday's news article, Mr. Flaherty himself was quoted as saying he delayed in the release of stage 2 proposal in order to save money and felt he wanted to be here from the voters first. In my 12 years of successfully working with the town of North Smithfield, I have devoted hundreds if not thousands of hours trying to save the town and school money and produce spaces and buildings that achieve greatness. I do not appreciate the grandstanding from local politicians who cannot take responsibility for their own actions and blame others. I look at politicians as people that are brave enough to take on challenges, but to be also mature enough to realize that every decision they make may not be the correct one. I do and have supported the efforts of the town to consolidate offices and facilities because I believe it will benefit the town and the school and most of all the taxpayers of North Smithfield. I would send a word of caution to the voting public for politicians who use the efforts of others to promote themselves and tarnish the reputations of others. We do not need this in government nor the town of North Smithfield, and with the actions within the last week, 3 of these people have identified themselves as such. Just last week, the town council authorized approval of RGB's proposal of stage 2, and we have scrambled to complete the work along with the school department as quickly as possible. So will the school receive their reimbursement by going through stage 2? Question. I still believe that, yes it will. It just won't be received in time for the November ballot question. But make no mistake about it, if the question is approved, the consolidation will save the town millions, and it is a good thing for the taxpayers. Thank you for the opportunity to present this letter. I am available to discuss the issue in person at another time or by phone this evening. Respectfully submitted, David L. DeQuatro, AIA, NCARB, Principal, RGB Architects. So unfortunately, what may be a communication misunderstanding or whatever explanation there is has turned into, unfortunately, a very sound professional having to take heat in the newspaper for something that evidently he did not cause. And that's upsetting, and I appreciate the council's allowing me to read that into the record. Having said that, I still think the 31,000 phase 2 is important. I still think that we need to go forward and do that work, not only from a financial point of view, and whether or not it goes in front of the town council again, but it needs to happen for the technical point of view, which is we're closing a school, we're consolidating programs, we're moving education facilities from one place to another. I think it is still very important. I just want the council to know that there is an added cost. If we want to seek RIDE after the stage 2 is complete, sometime later this year or early next year, there will be the need for a special election to approve that. Okay? Even if it passes November 3rd, even if it fails November 3rd. Okay? And quite honestly, well, I won't give you my opinion as to what should happen because I don't want to taint the process. I've tried to, although I haven't agreed with this bond issue, and I've made that perfectly well known, I am not campaigning against it. I just want it done the right way with all the available information in front of the people. That's all I wanted. It's too bad we didn't get that prior, but I understand communication issues happen. That's basically where I am right now, but I'll come back and answer any other questions. I also have the minutes from the May meeting if anybody thinks that that's necessary. Sure.
Anybody else like to?
So that's what we voted on the last time, that we approved it. And you, Mr. Yazbek, you still think it's a good idea to do that? In your opinion?
I think it's a good idea, but I want people to know that the funding from the state is going to require a second election. That, I don't know what a special election costs. I understand it's thousands of dollars. Maybe it could be one polling place and we could limit some of the costs, but ballots need to be printed. So it's still of something that's of importance. And, you know, we need to clear the air tonight so that we can get moving on it and go forward with it. But the issue is the issue.
Councilor Zelinski, anything from your end?
Yeah, at the risk of being accused of grandstanding, I have to speak my piece. When we took that vote back in May, I motioned to go forward with the stage 2 application and the expense of $31,000. There was no second. I was under the impression that in order to recoup this 1.7, we needed that phase 2 to be performed. I made the motion, it didn't get seconded. We came back a couple meetings ago, we made the motion, it got approved. We're in a quandary, how do we fix this? I don't want to see the town lose, if this bond is approved, I do not want to see the town lose $1.7 million over some procedural error that may have happened on this dais. We need to figure this out, we need to figure it out soon, if it's not too late. Now, if we have to move forward with a special election, these are not prepared, ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to work my way through this like probably most of you are. If we need to have a special election after that, Madam Clerk, is that what, $3,000 to $5,000 for a special election?
Closer to $6,500.
If that's what it takes, if the bond gets approved, if that's what it takes, and whomever the sitting council is at that time, I would hope that they would make a vote to have a special election so the town could recoup $1.7 million. Thank you, Mr. President.
So, where do I begin? Well, there's comments that I have for just about all of the documents that have been introduced and read into the record. I guess I would start by just saying I fully recognize what season that we're in, and that there's a lot of different motivations at work in this room tonight. I think that I've demonstrated over the course of the last 2 years that when I believe that I've done something wrong, that I step forward and take responsibility for it. And I see no reason to do anything different in this situation. Excuse me. I apologize.
I'm not home.
So, I've never ran from or hidden from acknowledging that I've made mistakes. You can accuse me of a lot of things, and criticize me for a lot of things. I may not be that bright. I may not have all the requisite skills to be most effective in being chairman of the town council. But nobody can impugn my integrity, my character, or my honesty. I'll tell you that I was very fortunate that I was raised by two of the best parents that anybody could ask for. And I don't have them around any longer. They've been gone for 2 decades. But for me, the way that I can show and honor their memory is to uphold the values that they taught me. So, if you want to criticize me for not understanding the procedure correctly, that's fine. I'll accept that. When we met on May 19th, it was at the North Smithfield Middle School. That day before, I had a conversation with Mr. DeQuatro. I have nothing against Mr. DeQuatro. My intent was to understand from him, because he's the architect that files these applications for us and understands the process. I needed to understand, if we didn't act on the stage 2 at that time, were we in any way going to be jeopardizing our ability to get the stage 2 reimbursement, the ride reimbursement? My mistake that evening was not having it in writing. For that, I apologize. If I misunderstood him, I apologize. If you go back and look at the tape of that evening, and I have several times, I explained to the council and to folks on YouTube, I recommended against proceeding with stage 2 for that reason. It was based on that information. If I heard it wrong, if I misinterpreted it, if Mr. DeQuattro didn't have it right, that makes no difference to me. I'll take responsibility if that's in fact what happened. I think that this is nothing more than a distraction. In fact, I have a hard time following Mr. Yazbak's support for this bond back and forth. Started off, the council endorsed it unanimously, the concept. This was a proposal that was brought forward by this community. It wasn't brought forward by me. I chaired the committee. There were 17 people. Many of you were sitting in this room, representing the town's Economic Development Committee, the town's Planning Board, Parks and Recreation. We had 3 folks from the schools. We had the superintendent, we had we had a member of the school committee, and we had the facilities director. This was a plan that was brought forward up from the community, and what we recognized was, we're not going to get everything that we want out of this plan. No one entity is going to get everything that they want. We knew we had to work within a $12 million ceiling. That was from our financial advisor. The town, they said, don't go beyond 12 million. You guys need to pay off some debt before you take on more debt than 12 million. We took an approach where we looked at the entire community, not just the schools, not just the roads, not just this deplorable building that we're sitting in. We looked at it as a whole, and we said, what can we do? What are the top priorities? How can we make this work for everyone concerned, for the entire town? And the plan that we come up with was one that the council endorsed wholeheartedly, as did the school committee. On that evening of May 19th, when we had that meeting at the middle school, earlier in that evening, the town council took a vote to reject a proposed zone change for Anchor Subaru. And it was on that basis that Mr. Yazbak said, I can no longer support this proposal. Subsequent to that, this council came back and we just like we did this evening, we revisited that vote and we amended it. Did Anchor Subaru get everything that they were looking for? No. Did they get what they needed in order to expand their facility? They did. And yet, Mr. Yazbak didn't come back at that point and say, okay, well, now that we've approved that, I'm back on board with supporting this bond. So there's a lot of motives going on out there, folks, and it's up to you to sort through and understand what's fact, what's fiction, who's doing things for what motives. I'm not going to tell you that. That's up to everyone in this room to understand those issues. What I'm saying this evening is that we have put before this community a plan that balances and addresses the needs and the challenges of this entire community, and we did it in a responsible way. This is something that's been in the works for a year and a half. This is not, I know that some people may just be waking up to it, hearing about what's going on with this bond issue. They think that maybe that it just got cooked up in the last month and a half. This has been going on for a year and a half. Those people that you mentioned worked and labored over that time. And there's references to the town council disbanded this group. The ordinance that was put in place, the resolution, I thought I turned this off.
Mr. President, if you hand it to me, I'll kill it for you.
That's off. The ordinance that created that task force that did this work never intended for it to go on forever and ever. In fact, it said it will meet between June and January, June of 2013 to January 2014. It would present its proposal, its final recommendation to the town council, and then its work would be considered done. So for folks who think that I disbanded them, I took over, whatever. I'm not gonna get in arguing tit for tat. So this concept has earned the unanimous support of the town council and the school committee. It's one that I believe in. The dollars that were referenced when we did this plan, we needed to understand what the cost was going to be to taxpayers. The total bonded amount is $12 million. It's $2.5 million for roads. It's $5.3 million for municipal buildings, and it's $4.2 million for school buildings. It will once and for all address the Hallowell problem, so we don't have to come back and say at some point later, are we going to put more money into Hallowell, a school that we can't secure? It addresses all those needs in a fair and balanced way. The cost amount, those figures came from our town's fiscal advisor, And I went back and forth, and I think that the town finance director can corroborate this. And when those numbers came over, I said, I want to double check and I want to triple check that those numbers are accurate. And we understand that we're talking about the worst case scenario being $160 for an average homeowner with a home assessed at $250,000. We are borrowing the total amount necessary to do this job. If we succeed in getting the ride reimbursement, which I believe we will, then that reduces the town's cost. And according to our town's fiscal advisor, it reduces it by $10 per homeowner. Average home assessed at $250,000. That figure also assumes zero growth in the tax base, which we have had very good growth in the tax base for the last few years. So that was the picture that we were presenting to people in the town. If somebody wants to criticize or say that I put something through with, I'm trying to pull one over on the voters, by all means, make your case, but I would argue that this discussion that we're having tonight about the stage 2 is nothing more than a distraction on the part of some people who may have some other motive for wanting to see these bonds get defeated. What that is, I don't know. I've thought about it, I've tried to speculate what it could be. I don't have an answer. All I know is the proposal that's coming before the town was well vetted, and I feel very confident. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. I can feel that we have brought to the community a plan that came from the community. And if people don't want to support that, then we will figure out how to get by. And if that means that there's a court order at some point that we have to plow $12 million into Hallowell alone, then so be it. But at least we have provided the community with an opportunity that has not been presented to this community for it's never been presented to this community, to look at all of our facilities and to put forward a plan that addresses all of the challenges, this building included. So I'm going to take the time, while I have this opportunity, to explain one of the things. I mean, aside from the benefit to the school, which is the school district, is huge. Mr. Lindbergh mentioned the science labs. We had a forum Saturday at Hallowell School to go through a slide presentation so that we could inform people what would be achieved in this bond package. We had about 6 or 7 people there, most of the people who were involved in this. There was really no interest, which was disappointing. But the improvements that would take place at the high school and just being able to get rid of Hallowell and to decommission it and relocate those students to improved facilities is worth it on its own. Then you take this building and say we can restore this building and accommodate not just the school department in this building, but all town administrative functions and school administrative functions. How good would that be to actually have our town administration and school administration working in the same building in terms of collaboration? We know it can fit. That's why we hired qualified architects to go through and to evaluate that and analyze it. So we have a great proposal before this town. If this town chooses not to approve it, then we will do whatever we have to do. It's going to be left to those folks who occupy this table and some of them are in this room, occupy this table beginning December 1st. So unless anybody has any questions, I have nothing further to say.
Mr. President?
Mr. Yazbek.
The unanimous vote on the bond that you referred to, again, we're talking about things out of context. It was before the treatment of Anchor Subaru, correct? You clearly pointed that out. However, you didn't point out the fact that also, I am on record adamantly stating that I didn't think the bond issue needed to be divided into 3 separate questions. I thought it was one big question. Either people want to invest in all of North Smithfield or they don't. This 3-question issue has continually met with my opposition. In addition to that, the growth that you cite as far as potential tax base growth, the growth that we've experienced in the last 2, 3, 4 years has not been from real estate tax growth. It has been from tangible tax growth from the National Grid Company. Real estate does not depreciate on most issues. going forward. Of course, there's ups and downs with real estate market all the time, but the general trend is real estate holds its values and all goes up. Tangible property depreciates on a much quicker basis, and I believe almost all of National Grid's equipment, and somebody will correct me out there, because I know our tax assessors, our acting tax assessors sitting out there, I believe the National Grid work goes out either on a 10 or a 15-year schedule. So at the end of 10 or 15 years, whatever it is, it's zero. So yes, there may be some growth out there, and yes, we're gonna see some more growth from National Grid, because they just are getting ready to put another line in. And thank God they're the town's largest taxpayer. But eventually that money goes away. To be building budgets and promises on that money is wrong. I've tried to warn this council a number of times. I'll take the opportunity since you brought it up to do it again. So yes, there wasn't a unanimous vote for the bond. The problem is the unanimous vote took place before the council changed it. I said I would not politic against this. I am still not politicking against it, although you seem to think that I am. I just want everybody to have the information. If you want the RIDE funding to come, you need to have a special election. That's pretty much a given fact at this point in time, unless somebody wants to dispute that. And I strongly encourage that if the town wants to go forward with it, they obtain that, because I think 1.7 or 1.8, whatever the actual number is going to be, is a significant amount for our taxpayers, okay? But since the thing was chopped up, since the whole thing seems to be a hodgepodge of last-minute changes, for what reasons, I have no idea. I'm not voting for it personally. Am I going to take out an ad and encourage other people not to vote for it? No. We need to get it done. You know, same way that you think that the RIDE $31,000 for phase 2 may or may not be required at this time. I think it's required. I think it's required even if you don't get funding. If you go forward, you're going to need to have that for the technical aspects, not just the financial.
No argument there.
So
No argument.
again, if you need to you know, bring things in, let's at least bring things to the table where we can agree as to what context it was. So don't say there was a unanimous vote, because the unanimous vote was about apples, and you are speaking oranges right now.
Well, a couple of points. One is you talked about the taxes, and we're not, you know, the growth has been intangible. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but that's exactly why we talked about presenting this to the community in a worst-case scenario format, assuming that there's no growth. So I don't know why you're seeming to think that I was putting this forward as it's all going to get paid through growth or something like that.
You just made the comment 2 minutes ago, Mr. Flaherty. You said that it may not affect the taxpayers because we have growth. I'm just warning you, we don't have growth.
No,
we have growth in
No,
tangible.
Mr. Yazbek, you're mistaken. I said that the number, the worst-case scenario number for taxpayers, the cost of taxpayers, the $160, is based on a worst-case scenario, assuming that there is no growth in the tax base. So I don't know if you weren't listening, or
But then you said we've had significant growth.
We have had significant growth.
And I'm telling you, it's going away, and it's going to go the other way. That's what I'm trying to explain to you.
Well, if I had my crystal ball out and I could tell all that, I wouldn't be sitting up here. The second thing, you mentioned about the splitting of the vote into 3 questions. This is something that we debated quite a bit. I was the first proponent to say, put it out as a single package. I heard from a number of people in the town that didn't want that. They wanted the opportunity to vote on them individually. We had public hearings. I got a boatload of emails, telephone calls. I know that Mr. McGee did as well. You were the only one, Mr. Yazbak, who objected to splitting it into 3. That was something that was a mandate of the public. We responded to that. This council acted responsibly, in my opinion. Would I have preferred it was still one package? Absolutely. But that's not what people wanted. So, you know, again, I'm coming back to this. I don't know what this is all about tonight. We're in the same place that we started. You wanted to have the opportunity to air this. We have aired it. I still think that this whole discussion right now is nothing more than a distraction and some attempt to promote that there's some chaos or there's reason to be concerned about this. And all I hope is that people can see through that and vote on this for what it is. I said my piece.
And on that, weighing in on the voting, we did all agree. I loved it all as one too, but I guess it was just us that loved it, because I did get a lot of feedback that everyone wanted to vote on it separately. That is true. That's why, I went back on it, because more people were saying it to me, so it's not our choice, it's what the townspeople wanted, so that's why I went to, well, split it, but if I had my way, I would have done one.
So we are in, I believe that we're in, a motion is pending, is that correct? We're in the discussion phase of the motion, and I believe that the motion was by Mr. Yazback to proceed with the expenditure of $31,800, I believe it was.
We already approved that.
We already did, but
It was reconsidered,
It was
so we can have the
reconsidered, so-
discussion and all the facts in front
so
of
we're
us.
back to where we started on October 6th. So if there's no further discussion, I would ask for a roll call vote. The vote is, the yes vote is to approve the Stage 2 ride application, which we already did on October 6th,
Mr. President.
to get the reimbursement.
Mr. President,
Mr. Zulus.
we're short a council member tonight. What happens if if it becomes a tie, a deadlock? Do we automatically revert to the approved $31,000 that was voted on previously? Council, solicitor, you're laughing. I can see where this may go.
How I would see it is it would deadlock, which means that we actually reconsidered, so we already went past that. So I don't think we can revert back. So if it deadlocked on this vote, we would not go forward on it, but we would not really not go forward on it. So it's in limbo, probably until the next meeting, at which you might have a quorum and it can come back up. So there's no, it's just in limbo if you don't vote for it or against it.
But I'll point out that when it was recommended to the council to proceed on October 6th, that the recommendation was we should be proceeding quickly on this, and that there was a lot of work that RGB needed to get done, and that was why they were recommending to proceed even before the election. Because that was the whole reason for holding it, was wait until the election, and if the voters said yes, then we spend the $31,000 and go get the reimbursement. So I believe that RGB has started work as they've been asked to do. They've got a signed contract. So if it's a, I guess it's the same as if it's a deadlock vote, then we're in limbo, but the work continues, and then we come back on November 3rd and approve it. This just seems like it's a huge, colossal waste of time.
Mr. President, can we call a vote?
Well, we can't, because unless somebody wants to withdraw the motion.
So, I'm just confused I am so confused on what
Well, a motion has been made by Mr. Yazback to continue proceeding with the $31,800 to RGB to complete the Stage 2 application. That's the motion. It was seconded by Councilor McGee.
Now that all the facts are on the table.
Now that all the facts are on the table, and
do we want to approve it?
we can either,
Well, that's
we
what
can either have a roll call vote, or the main Nick can withdraw the motion. What's your pleasure?
You want to call the vote, Mr. President?
Yes.
The motion stands.
Well, you know what? There's been a lot of confusion here. I know how I'm going to vote. I voted consistently. I'm not changing. So, I don't know. If Mr. Yazback withdraws the motion, then our previous vote, which was 5-0 to approve it, gets carried forward. No?
No.
If Mr. Yazback removes his motion, we go back to square one, back to, no?
No.
I think we're having a lot of conversation with nothing. As long as all the facts are out, I still want to go forward with the second phase of the ride application. I just want all the information to be out there so everybody understands it. And I don't think that was done October 6th. All right? That's the only purpose of this discussion. Has nothing else to do. I think
Call the
people,
vote, please.
whether they,
Madam Clerk, call a vote.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Yazbak.
yes.
Mr. Swansky.
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty.
Yes, motion carries.
Mr. President,
Mr. Walensky.
may I get a 5-minute recess so I can get the water?
5-minute recess?
Yeah.